Yo, what is good, everybody? My name is Coaster King. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about the top 10 most overrated coasters that I've ever been on. Now, there's a quick disclaimer. I feel like a lot of times when people talk about overrated coasters, people make it triggered, people make it offended because they talk about their favorite coaster and say overrated in the same sentence. I don't want to offend anyone. I don't want to make anyone feel bad. I'm just here to give my explanation as to why I think some of these rides are a little bit overrated. So to kick things off, I'm going to trigger a lot of people by saying that I think Mystic Timbers is overrated. Now, quick disclaimer. This is the reason why I have it at number 10. I only rode it once, and I did ride it in the back. I waited about 2 hours to ride it, but only got that one ride. Now, I thought the ride was pretty decent. However, do I think it's anywhere near El Toro level or any of the RMCs? No. I think the ride was fun, but not great. The airtime was mediocre compared to El Toro and some of the greater wooden coasters, and I don't think that it should be in that tier that some enthusiasts make it out to be in. Now, as for Kinako, this is at my home park, so I'm not biased in any way towards it. I love the ride, however, I think it's a little overrated. At the end of the day, it's just like 13 seconds long, the ride. It's just not that fun. I would much rather go on a hyper coaster, and I hate to see Kinako rated over pretty much any B&M hyper. This kind of goes along with Top Thrill tracks there, because Kinaka's worse, but Top Thrill is also a little overhyped in the sense that it's a very short ride and it's not as good as a hyper, in my opinion. I hate to see it ranked over at hyper. Both Kinako and Top Thrill tracks are pretty much included in this number 9 spot. As for number 8, I have Mr. Freeze, specifically the one at Six Flags Over Texas. Now, for Mr. Freeze, I feel like it's hyped up a little bit to be a great steel coaster that is a lot of fun. But honestly, I feel like it was pretty mediocre. It was rough, didn't offer that much intensity, and pretty much gave no airtime. I had a lot of head banging, and my head was going back and forth, and I really found it to be really rough. I just think that sometimes, especially the one at St. Louis, for some reason, it's hyped up to be some great ride, but it's really not all that. I don't even think it's in my top 50. Honestly, uninspiring layout, pretty boring and pretty rough, makes the ride just not that good. As for number 7, we have Raptor. This is definitely going to trigger some people, but there is no way that you can put Raptor above a ride like Banshee or even like Great Bear. Raptor is a good ride, sure, but it's rough in my opinion. It has a rattle, and honestly, it does not have the same forces as a ride like Great Bear does or Banshee. Banshee's a far superior ride, and I just can't take it when people say that Raptor is better than Banshee. It's just not true. I know this is going to trigger a lot of people, but honestly, it's a little bit rougher than Banshee, and it doesn't give the same amount of great forces that Banshee does. Number 6, I have the Incredible Hulk Coaster. I think this ride is hyped up to be an elite roller coaster, but really at the end of the day, it doesn't give you really any forces. It does have a little bit of the B&M rattle, and sure, the theming is amazing, but honestly, I just don't find the ride to be that great. I think it's hyped up to be like a top 50 ride in the world, but I don't think it deserves to be there. The launch is pretty uninspiring. It's just a tire launch. It's like comparable to Skyrush's Lift Hill. As for the ride itself, as I said before, you get a little bit of a rattle. You don't get too much airtime, and it's not overly intense. I find the forces to be just pretty average, and honestly don't think this ride is as good as it should be. Number 5, going to get a lot of people mad again. I hate to keep bashing on Cedar Point, but it's Magnum XL200. Now, when I went in this ride, I went on the back and got no airtime. I went in the third row and got some airtime, I'll admit that. But I just can't stand it when people put this over rides like Maverick, rides like Nitro, and other hypers. I just can't take that. I mean, Magnum, you get some ejector airtime, but honestly, it's really rough. The whole ride doesn't give you that much airtime at all. Sure, at the end, you do get a little bit, a few pops of ejector, but really, it's just not that good. The first half of the ride is very boring, very uninspiring. Once again, not saying the second half of the ride is bad. It's a lot of fun. You get a lot of ejector airtime, but honestly, it should be nowhere near the hypers like Nitro, Candemonia, Mako, and I just can't stand when they're up there, when this is ranked up there with those rides. Number 4, I have Apollo Chariot at Busch Gardens, Williamsburg. Now, this ride, for some weird reason, was hyped up to be one of the best hypers in the world, if not the best hyper. When I went on it, I was completely let down. I'm not gonna lie. It was rough. One of the rougher hypers I've ever been on, with the roughest one I'm gonna talk about in a second here. The layout was pretty boring. I got some floater airtime, but nowhere near the extent of like a Cannamonium or a Nitro. I found it to be pretty boring. There was one airtime hill towards the end that was probably the best part of the ride. The drop didn't give you that much airtime. Like that pre-drop little dip thing did not do much for me. I rode it in the back, rode it in the front, and really just did not see the ride that some people and enthusiasts make it out to be. Number 3, continuing with the Cedar Fair bashing, we have the Beast. Now, the Beast is one of the most well-known roller coasters in the world. And just to say this get this out of the way, I did go on a night ride on the Beast. I did that. You can't say that I didn't, because I did. And honestly, it was just really boring. I got no airtime, got really some average forces. Sure, it was cool to be going to the forest at night, but honestly, it was overrated. I can't stand when it's near the tier of El Toro or near the tier of some other wooden roller coasters like the Voyage, right? When you're putting it in the conversation with rides like Boulder Dash, El Toro, Voyage, it just doesn't make any sense. Sure, like all the rides in this list, it is a great ride. It's a lot of fun. However, it's not near the tier that people make it out to be, is my point. Number 2 is Diamondback. Now, for years, Diamondback has been hyped up to be the best hypercoaster in the world. For years. And when I went Diamondback, I was so unbelievably underwhelmed. The ride was very rough. Sure, it gave some great floater airtime, but really not to the extent that it's hyped up to give. I think this goes along with all this Kings Island / Cedar Fair hype. So basically, any ride that's at those two parks is just loved by all enthusiasts. Pretty much because of the Cedar Fair fanboys. Any ride that's at these parks is hyped up to be goated, right? Diamondback is one of them. Diamondback's probably the worst. Everyone loves Diamondback basically because it's at Kings Island. But if this ride was at a Six Flags park, no one would like it and everyone would trash on it. There could be a hyper that's at like over Georgia and it would just get trashed on. And then this one, no matter how bad it can be, is just loved because that's Kings Island. That's what happens, and Diamondback is just not the level of coaster as some of the other hypers are. I don't think it is anywhere near the best hyper. The airtime was below average compared to other B&M hypers. It had a really bad rattle, and I went on a hot summer day. It was running well, and yeah, just Diamondback's overrated. And the worst and most overrated coaster, in my opinion, is Millennium Force at Cedar Point. Goes along with what I just said before about any ride at Cedar Point or Kings Island is automatically going to be overrated, with the exception of a few rides. But basically, this ride does not give you any forces, really. It gives you some airtime, and you do gray out a little bit. But it's nowhere near some of the other Gigas and Hypers out there. I would take Orion every day of the week over Millennium Force. I would take Orion in the 4th row, the Millennium Force in the front or back row. I just don't think that Millennium Force can be considered to the level of Maverick or Steel Vengeance. I don't think that it's anywhere near a top 5 ride in the world. It just doesn't give you that many forces, and really it's not that good of a ride. Sure, it has a nostalgia effect of how important it was and how cool it is that you want it, but honestly, it is overrated in the sense that it's just not that good of a ride. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to let me know in the comment section what you think about the video and anything you guys want me to touch on in the future. I'll probably be making top 10 most underrated coasters that I've been on to kind of even out the positivity and negativity. But for now, I'll see you guys later.